We as Americans need to wake up and realize that this country is transforming faster now than it ever has in our history. And if we don't respond peacefully and legitimately in some way to what they're doing, they will continue to be the opposite of peaceful and legitimate in their actions.
Welcome, everybody. We are at the Moment of Truth Summit. That's Mike Lindell's sponsored summit on election fraud. And we're standing here with retired Lieutenant Colonel Darin Gaub. He is involved in a lot of things. He's the co-founder and national spokesman for an organization called Restore Liberty. They've got directors in, 36, 37 states. Right. And you guys are doing some really important work. And somebody sent me an article that you had written about crossing the Rubicon. It really struck me. Talk about it. You said the FBI crossed the Rubicon. What does that mean?
Sure. Yeah, and for those of us who love history, that's a term that resonates with us very clearly. But when Caesar crossed the Rubicon River in Italy into the Roman Empire, by doing so with an army behind him, he committed treason against his nation. And so crossing the Rubicon today has become it's a clear statement that you've done something that you can't come back from. And so in this case, I would say that with the FBI exposing their methods and their motives in a Mar-a-Lago raid, which is far more than just about Trump. It's about an overreaching federal agency that has decided that the justice and pursuit of truth is not their main interest. It's a political hit job on someone they fear for running in 2024. And by them doing that, in exposing their real motives, we as Americans must respond in a good way, but a necessary way, and it may be uncomfortable for some. You're moving into new territory now in our response.
And so you outlined 4 steps that you thought would be good to take. Talk about those.
Okay, and I'll try to remember all 4, of course, but a couple of them may get merged together. But ultimately, number 1 is the sheriff of a county is really one of the most important people in this nation. And so those sheriffs in each county need to stand up in front of their people in whatever format best works for them and say, you know what, I will stand between the people of this county and an overreaching, whether it be FBI, CIA, any kind of letter agency at the federal level. And we're beyond the point where we can say that there are good people in the organization. And we know that is true. But the message is passed that they don't care anymore, and we have to take that. The sheriffs need to take that step. In addition, in merging a couple of those points together, governors in their states need to assess the level of federal involvement in their state, and then make hard decisions that would limit that power in their states, because we are a federalist system. The states are the primary political entity in our country. And we delegate powers to the federal government. If you delegate, you can remove. Yeah. And they should be able to stand up and say, you know what? You're done here. Return the money. I'm from Montana. 40% of our budget is federal money. We need to say, you know what? Take it back. I do not want the strings and the real cost that's attached to this, because that cost is far much more than it really needs to be. And then
cost in terms of like the strings that come attached to it.
All the strings. I mean, look at the cultural degradation in our schools. Look at the colleges. Look at, even in Montana, one of our biggest things is highway funding. It all comes with these strings attached that makes us do things that we really don't want to do. And elections is part of that problem as well. And if we don't get elections right, well, I don't know where we're going to go from there. Nobody can really truly imagine that for sure. But the other thing, so money, and worst case scenarios, they need to be like, okay, we have 13 field offices in Montana. How many of them do we really need? Maybe it's time to tell those folks, either abide by your oath on the Constitution of the nation and our state, or you leave. We have sheriffs, we have sheriff deputies. We can enforce our own peace and our own laws in our counties and our state. We don't need federal help. The more you centralize power in a higher authority, the more they abuse it, because it's human nature to do that. And so that's the genesis of the point of what I'm saying, is it could get very uncomfortable for us, but we didn't cross the Rubicon, they did.
And so you were at Mar-a-Lago like the day before the raid, huh?
In Palm Beach.
In Palm Beach,
in Palm Beach area. I was speaking at a congressional fundraiser, so I wasn't far from there at all. And I got home, a few hours later, you're like, oh, wow, that's a big message.
Yeah. And so what do you think they're trying to do? I mean, are they actually searching for crimes? What's the message to Americans by the FBI doing this? And could it just be an aberration, or did they really cross the Rubicon and there's no going back now?
I think the crossing the Rubicon idea is the fact that they have displayed massively and in public that they're willing to perform a political hit job against a possible future political opponent that rightly or wrongly they fear.
Yeah.
And I don't run around wearing Trump stuff all the time. That's just not me. I don't really do that with anybody. But we have to understand the message here is we don't like this guy, and we need to raid him and either look for evidence, create the evidence, or something like that. And we'll see how that plays out. So I certainly don't have visibility on that. But it's pretty clear to the majority of Americans that are paying close enough attention that raid was not necessary. And the message was passed that they're going to do whatever they can to make sure they try to find a way to criminalize Donald Trump to the point where he cannot run for office in 2024. And the more and more extreme they get, the further they reach, the more and more we as Americans need to wake up and realize that this country is transforming faster now than it ever has in our history. And if we don't respond peacefully and legitimately in some way to what they're doing, they will continue to be the opposite of peaceful and legitimate in their actions towards us.
Yeah. So you guys focus at Restore Liberty on the 9th Amendment and the 10th Amendment. Talk a little bit about that and kind of what you guys as an organization are working on.
Okay, thanks. See, one of my hobbies is I like to do home reconstruction or home building and things like that. And so we like to focus on the fact that if you don't have the right kind of foundation, the rest of the way up is not going to be right. So we're really focused on the local level. Local action, national impact, because we want to get people experience and moving their way up, just like what's been done against us, except for they tend to fail upwards. And so they can just make bigger problems as they go up. So we're looking at sheriffs and school boards with our PAC and helping along fund some of those things to get that base rebuilt. And then we can move to walls, then we can move to the roof, because people are so focused on the Biden administration and the swamp that is so deep, and we want immediate fixes, and it's just not going to happen. So we have to do, with Restore Liberty, we said we want to build a foundation that's multiple decades long, that is intended to counter the Soros agenda and those kinds of things, and push out the globalist agenda and influence in our nation that shouldn't be here. Our real foundation is our family. That's what's under the attack the most right now, through schools, through churches, and even, strangely enough, through churches and other places. So we want to help rebuild that foundation. And what we have to help arm us, besides the Bible and Scripture and the Judeo-Christian values that we're founded on, is our own Constitution that if we don't read and understand, we'll never use it right. So the 9th and 10th Amendments, like you asked. 9th Amendment says that those powers that are not delegated to the states, or therefore delegated also to the federal government, are given to are retained at the individual level. That way no one could say that because something wasn't written in the Constitution, that therefore it can belong to the federal or something. It automatically defaults to the person. The 10th Amendment says that the states are the predominant political entity. And frankly, through the people, or from the people through the states to the federal level, we delegated the federal level powers, 18 of them to be specific, in our original Constitution, that was supposed to limit them to, and that was it. And most all the other work was to be governance closest to the people by those we know best, rather than some administrative clerk in a building in Washington, D.C. making rules for how I can use my land in west central Montana. So if we do that, government's more responsive, government has better understanding, government diffuses power in a federal system the way we're designed in the first place. And we get back to the foundation of what made this country great. Obviously, we've moved a long ways from that.
How do people learn more about Restore Liberty, and how can people get involved?
First thing is our website. We're at restore-liberty.org. And you can send an email to our general inbox there. We have a thing called a Declaration of Constitutional Consent, which is It's like a rewording of the Declaration of Independence with a little bit of historical data to it to provide some education. If you agree with that and sign it, all we're going to do is maybe send you an email and say, hey, thank you. The idea is that you print it off and mail it to your representatives and stuff and say, hey, here's how you've usurped our constitutional powers. We got tired of people saying we need a new constitution or declaration. So, nope, just use the ones we've got.
Yep.
But if we get your information in our email inbox, we'll forward you to a state director if we have a state director there. I mean, odds are pretty good at this point. And then we'll just grow it from there, because just like federalism in the diffusing of power, we have a national team. We have state directors, but we want all the information and the endorsing of candidates and the education and stuff to be as close to the local level as possible to make it the best it can be.
Fantastic. And yeah, you guys have, you said, a PAC, a 501c3, and a 501c4, so you guys are pretty widely involved in all kinds of stuff, huh?
Yeah, we can educate people on the Constitution from 9 months to 99 years old. We can endorse candidates. And we are tired of the lesser of two evils approach, so we'll endorse somebody. Even if someone says, well, they don't have the money, they don't have a chance, we're going to be like, yeah, but they're still the right person.
Yeah.
And if we have a history and a track record of showing who these phenomenal candidates are, regardless of their odds of victory, then we'll gain the trust we need to have people look at our list of endorsees and move from there. It also allows us to provide independent expenditures and expenses towards races that we pick as a PAC. And we've had some successes in that arena in little spots across the country, but I think those successes will grow as people come to trust us and know that we know what we're doing.
Excellent. Well, Darin Gaub, thank you very much for being with us. Thanks for what you're doing.
Yeah. Thanks, Alex. Always a pleasure to see you.